lead to this team's success if they can win this series.
Yeah, and conversely, SpaceStation's got to keep the motivation going even after losing Game 1. Let's see what they choose, if they're going to go for a first pick or choose the battleground. They chose first pick. Simplicity picks Cursed Hollow.
That's what they first picked yesterday in the series,
did.
too. So obviously they feel pretty comfortable on here. They won that. It was through a late game team fight. They didn't necessarily have the right type of control, but they were never fully out of the game. Even when they had given up that curse mid-game, they were still sitting on 2 tributes that they had obtained earlier, and then they were able to kind of turn things around as that went on. So there was a lot of things that they did that were in their favor. They were never fully out, and they stayed in just enough to win that late game team fight and get their victory yesterday. Gotta pick it again today.
And part of what kept them in the game so long is they had a lot of global focus in their draft. They had Dahaka, Abathur, and then they had ETC. I don't remember if he picked Mosh or Stage Dive that game, but even with that, you still had Dahaka and Abathur. So you have a lot of global focus. And that's always if you're a team that knows that you are favored in team fights, having globals that even if you lose on some early structures but can keep you caught up in a way so that you can still take even fights and then win those late game team fights, it's worked for them before.
This is where we saw K1's Alex Straza yesterday,
Yes.
which looked amazing, by the way. But the one thing about all their drafts so far is that they're not highly prioritizing the support. K1 Pro has looked very comfortable on multiple supports. He was in the last rotation. I think if we look at the drafts, I'm pretty sure it's either the last 2 or last pick in every draft. They have no he is more than comfortable. He's shown a plethora of supports that he's been able to play so far. Uther, Stukov, Alex Straza, it really doesn't matter. This guy is prepared, and he's like, whatever we need, I gotcha. Let's focus on our core. And I think that's a product of their success so far. Other teams have a very different response to how they draft. We'll see how this success goes. It's an interesting spot for this team.
You're absolutely correct. There was only one game yesterday where they had Stukov higher before first bans. Otherwise, it was always left that K1 Pro can flex and be able to respond to whatever is thrown at them. And in the last game, we saw how instrumental that was to their success. His Uther was awesome. It took care of Casanova pretty much on its own. It was that good. And his Stukov has been on point, and I think it's just so awesome that K1 Pro is not only switched over to support, he's making plays on said supports, and he's even at the point where he can flex it out and allow them to get some other comfort picks that they more highly prioritize.
Sometimes, like after being here for 2 days and then doing the Crucible stuff before, sometimes I feel like these screens behind you are like voice activated. You're like, oh, Uther, and then Uther popped up on the screen. I'm like, dude, we got like 60, 70, whatever heroes at this point. I'm like, why do I get she says one word and it shows up right over her shoulder. I think we're in the draft screen now, but I'm like,
I think it's a mind reader too, because I was thinking Brightwing because K1 Pro also played Brightwing, and it's also there. It's just all over.
Can we at least? So this is actually what happens in studio. I'm looking over at Gilly. She's like, oh, Uther something, and literally Uther pops up in the screen. I'm like, why is this a thing? This keeps happening. Yesterday, you even brought up, I'm not kidding, you brought up Butcher. It happened. I love the studio. I love the setup, but I feel like I'm being trolled by either like some voice activation thing, somebody in production.
I have a remote control down here.
Like,
Surprise!
just click
Welcome
a button.
to HGC.
Like, we literally have like just dozens of heroes, like a massive amount of heroes, and then like the one thing that you say each time. It's like, Gilly, guess what hero's over your shoulder right now?
ETC.
Oh, okay, you failed. All right, at least I know she's not cheating.
No.
It's Zagara Sonya.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. I was thinking Zagara, so yeah, I think it's just mind control.
Yes, clearly you were thinking Zagara. That's
Always.
why you said ETC. That makes a lot of sense.
I had to throw you off the scent.
Like the cow gets the bird.
The bird gets the worm, but the cow gets the bird. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Everyone knows the saying. I don't know why it's so
clearly,
weird to you.
just like they stick to you, like almost, not just.
It's
glue.
a specific kind of glue.
But it's just, that's one, I remember like I'm on the drive home last night, I'm like, how did that go? Like the bird gets the worm, but the cow gets the bird. I'm like, what?
I don't know how he doesn't know it, guys. We're still waiting. We're
oh, I think we're
waiting to get into the draft for 2. We had started, but it seemed like it was maybe going to be. I think we got it.
Let's go.
Yeah.
There we go.
Just double checking that everything.
Oh, wait a minute. That's actually on the other side this time.
Just kidding.
That's not Tom's fault. Hashtag not Tom's fault.
Oh.
This time. It's actually on the other side. Yes.
Simplicity versus SpaceStation. SpaceStation, losing the first game, how do you think they feel about it, like knowing the personalities?
I don't think it's anything too hurtful at this point for their psyche. I mean, obviously they went in, they tried something very, very aggressive. We're talking about Judgment Tyrael plus the Zeratul, which is a very difficult thing to pull off, especially the newer style Zeratul that we have. And then they had the perfect counter on the other side, that Uther pick on that backside. It just really countered a lot of what they wanted to do, even going Hand of Protection, which is Uther's version of Cleanse, to make sure that that went through. Hanzo's just, I'm dipping right out of here. Things like that really set the tone for Simplicity. So I think draft-wise, it's very similar to the Tyrael composition that we saw yesterday. They had a very specific strategy how they wanted to play, but it didn't necessarily pay off. And I think that if they just go towards something a little bit more standard, this is something we touched on with the Equinox, is the aggression. That is, if you were to apply one word association, it would be aggressive when we talk about Heroes of the Storm with Equinox. Judgment is not something we see. The last team I think we saw to run Judgment was, I believe, what were their name? I think it was like when King Caffeine ran it. They ran it on B-Step. When they ran it on Tomb of the Spider Queen, they ran it, I think that was with the Jaina composition maybe. Yeah, it works for a little bit until it doesn't.
Yeah, what do you think that game looks like had they picked Sanctification?
Better.
You think it?
Yes,
yeah,
more better.
He does like to play aggressively, and that was the dive. There was a dive possibility, but Sanctification also in the same way can enable dives. And we saw Sanctification from Equinox yesterday. So we'll see if they want to continue that Tyrael Grey main strategy now, it not working for 2 times in a row. Or 2 series in a row.
So ETC just refuses to lose, Gilly.
Hasn't yet.
And he's finally to the point where, like, guys, maybe we should just ban ETC. And I think that we're going to see that trickle-down effect when we get to the later series and things like that. Yes, Genji's strong. Yes, Hanzo's strong. Oh, by the way, Kaldor says that Lucio's strong. But it's a matter of, is somebody else stronger? I think ETC might be in that first ban potential. Yeah,
at least within our region. And SpaceStation has that luxury because most of the NA teams, really all of the games except the first game of the first series, they've been leaving Genji to be in the second ban position. So now Simplicity has to decide, do we just ban Genji away here, or can we let it through? Is there something else that's scarier? Is Abathur a problem that we don't want to give to SpaceStation? I think that would probably be the scariest global, although there have been a lot of Dahaka bans, or picks. Is Hanzo enough of an issue?
They banned Lucio last game against Tomster, Lucio is at the top, but I also think that's one of Tomster's better heroes. They're going to take Hanzo off the board, so I wonder if SpaceStation will be willing to commit to the Genji, maybe the Grey main, but also, oh wow, there they go. They go right into the Genji.
Simplicity, although K1 Pro has flexed onto a lot of different supports, actually hasn't played Lucio yet. And I wonder if that Hanzo ban was to know, they're going to know that SpaceStation will see that Genji want to pick it up so that they can still make sure that they get it as a sound barrier, a way of making sure that they can get through Dragon Blade.
When we talk about draft strategies and the lack of Simplicity highly prioritizing the support in all but one of their games, now Lucio is available if it comes back. And if Simplicity is not prioritizing that, we might see that. Lucio Genji is a little bit tricky, especially depending on what you pick at level 7, whether you go the questing for the extra range, whether you go the other talent where if there's enough people you get the bigger range. Things like that do make it a bit difficult, but I wouldn't be surprised in the least if we see that come out.
Lucio and what? Grey main?
Oh, Grey main, yeah.
That's what I would think. Dahaka though. Dahaka Grey main. Once again, very high priority on having Dahaka on this map, having some sort of global on Cursed Hollow.
So now do we get a potential Abathur on this side?
I mean, Abathur Genji is very strong. And then there's, if Tomster wants Lucio, there's, you know what's been weird to me? Is how much Rhaegar has been a priority in Europe and not here. I don't know if we've had a single Rhaegar.
He's fallen off. I love the Lucio pickup here.
Yep.
One of Tomster's best heroes, and he does really well on this battleground. There's a lot of terrain, I guess you can just kind of wall ride off of, get good value, especially if you pick certain talents, which a lot of them do go. And then we get the Arthas, which gives you that front line. We already know what he does against Greymane, built-in physical armor, gets the auto attack speed slow if he moves into Worgen form. So Arthas, a natural counter towards Greymane composition. So good draft here so far for SpaceStation.
Yeah, very well-rounded. Has Arthas as either the primary warrior or as Jason's hero for the side lane. Having support and then a good damage dealer and a mobile damage dealer as that at that. Having all of those things makes it hard for Simplicity to try to figure out what they want to target ban here, but if they don't want Abathur, Abathur still is a possible one. Another global, they're going to take away False Shadow, which makes me think maybe we're going to see the Abathur Dahaka again from Simplicity unless it's banned here by SpaceStation.
I'd be surprised if it's not, unless they saw something in that series. They were watching that series against Gale Force, and they were like, all right, they've run the Greymane Abathur. Maybe they took a few notes. Maybe they've had them in scrims. I don't know their scrim schedule, but maybe they've seen something to where if they do, they're okay with that. They also know the effectiveness that Tyrael Greymane has. They're hovering the Tyrael right now, maybe willing to give up that Abathur if that is picked up there for Simplicity.
Interesting. Simplicity didn't play Tyrael Greymane before, but it is such a strong combo, and it's been a strong combo for over a year, for a long time.
The thing that scares me, though, is King Caffeine, I don't think we historically have a lot of games for him on Tyrael. In terms of top 6 that I have played last year, Tyrael's not there.
No, it's not a common. When we think of King Caffeine, it's Muradin, not Johanna, really. Leoric way back in the day.
And so the reason I comment there is that I had seen Urho on stream. He had been playing some Tyrael. Everybody knows that Tyrael can be a secondary. We look at the Fnatic days when we had Wubby there making tremendous plays. But since Dahaka's already picked up, that might not necessarily, that's obviously not an option anymore to have Urho be that secondary tank to give that support to multiple members on there. So
that's true.
I think that maybe the Tyrael ban maybe not as needed, but just a safety net, so to speak, to make sure that you don't give up that potential.
Abathur. Either the support or the tank, knowing Simplicity, probably King Caffeine's tank. No, Alexstrasza again.
I can dig it. Genji is at times a primary damage dealer, but he has a sidekick of somebody that's going to be more of the sustain or the potential burst like we saw in one of the games with Li Ming. So waiting on that, potentially waiting to see if you can go into an Anubarak or something to cocoon the Dragon Blade, cocoon a potential sound barrier. And if they pick up a mage style here in SpaceStation, that might be that fallback option. Anubarak was King Caffeine's most second played hero in 2017.
Man, I'm looking at Alexstrasza versus Genji, and I'm a little scared for that dive on Alexstrasza, but when K1 Pro played Alex yesterday, it was less focused into the live and let live type build where you need to maintain that really high hit point bar. He did have exuberance still, but otherwise he was more focused on his abundance and having the double warrior profit off of that. And that's going to be there again for Simplicity, just depending obviously on what that final warrior is for King Caffeine. Final 2 picks for SpaceStation Gaming, and
well then,
we're going on an adventure, and we might get a little lost along the way.
Well then, so this has potential through the roof. Obviously, Vikings, 3 heroes in 1, if you're not as familiar with them. Now we've got Dive City here. Illidan Genji, if they prioritize a target, you said Alexstrasza, what would she do back there? Now we've got Illidan potentially hunting in onto Alexstrasza. Genji, he's like, hey, look, I've got an ability I can dive in too. That is threatening to say the least.
Yeah, and Alex's slows, especially with a focus on abundance, that takes 3 seconds to go down. The positioning needs to be perfect for Simplicity, and they have to make sure that they're able to defend it and get on that heal. Otherwise, you're solely relying on Alex's Gift of Life, which if you don't go into the full Life Blossom build, which at this point, can you rely on being able to keep your health high, then you're not going to be able to consistently be able to put those Qs out.
Who's our Vikings player?
Jason.
I thought it was him last year that might have had a couple of games.
Yeah, and then I think, and then Casanova play Illidan.
I believe so, yeah. So go with what you know is what King Caffeine said. He goes with Muradin. No surprise. Gives you that control. Obviously, he can press W, get that slowdown onto Illidan on that dive, although it's going to be a lot more problematic than that on how they survive. all eyes for me, Gilly, this game are going to be on K1 Pro and Alex Strauss.
Oh, yeah.
If he looked good yesterday, he's going to look really good if he survives this onslaught from SpaceStation, because he's going to be put to the test, and we're going to see if he can hold up to it.
But if he can get into Dragon Queen form for the fights, has Wing Buffet as a way of pushing back. This is a very melee-heavy composition. The auto attacks also splash that too. Oh, wait, I wonder, man. Yeah, it's all about keeping K1 Pro alive for this game. And Greymane too.
Can we call it buffet just for fun?
Yeah. What's a flame buffet look like? What's the main dish on a flame buffet?
I don't know. I've been to a few places. You walk up there and you just pick the meat. They throw it over a flame.
All right. Let's see if
that
if Alex Strauss is going to be the meat in this game. If she can stay alive, we're going into game 2 on Cursed Hollow with Simplicity leading 1-0.
Dragon meat. It is Jason on the Vikings. Gilly, if we're going to see a map where we get Lost Vikings, it's generally going to be Cursed Hollow. So we'll see how that plays out. The interesting thing for me will be camp prioritization. What I want to see from SpaceStation Gaming with the Siege Giants spawning early, I would love to see Genji and Illidan just go over to Simplicity side, be like, we're taking this camp because we've got all types of pressure in other lanes. So I wonder, how aggressive will SpaceStation be early game?
This is a really important game to watch from SpaceStation side. Not only are they down 1 game in the series, and they're bringing out, obviously, a strategy that is they've been holding on to, but it also requires a lot of flexing for them. You put Jason on the Vikings, and then Illidan is being played by Equinox, which puts Casanova back on his former role of main tank playing Arthas. So there's a lot of changes happening to make this composition possible, and after losing the last game on their map, and then having to do this flexible style and showing a strategy like this, it seems to be a really important one for SpaceStation to get a victory on.
There was an Equinox game on Illidan, bot lane towards the bottom left keep. Never forget. Minions MVP. There's a clip out there somewhere. He'll laugh about it.
Sounds like a lag F situation.
It was definitely along those lines. But this is what SpaceStation feels like, Gilly, in most of our drafts, is simply that high skill cap execution, and sometimes when you're at the level of that we're at in a league format, it's not always easy to pull off. It looks good when it works, but it's never easy.
And that goes back to SpaceStation in the last phase. Lot of counter drafting, trying to bring in heroes that they feel are great counters to what their opponents have picked, and in theory are amazing, but it comes down to a lot of really all the burden of execution being on them, and it's a tough one to be able to hit. Now they've found themselves a dwarf for first blood.
That's the Equinox we like to see. However, Tomster's going to suffer there, but as much as the roll swap to tank is there, Equinox still has that fire to play those melee assassins, and he's getting his opportunity now. He got a kill there, traded out though. Slight experience lead though so far, and now this is one of the values of the night camp. Having that spell armor in the Vikings and other lanes, you just go in. Equinox, however.
Great route in the slow. Illidan still does end up falling though, and with the symbiote, the Abathur hat, SpaceStation bit off slightly more than they could chew there. They hit 4 at the perfect time though to get that Mercenary Lord for the Vikings, as it pushed right, not only having the spell armor for that, but also giving the increased damage. They got some stuff done in the mid, but unfortunately sacrificed a couple of heroes to make it happen.
A little bit different build this go around for Abathur. Yesterday we saw the mine build come out. This time we see more of that support role, going into the spike burst, getting the cooldown at level 1, plus the adrenal overload at level 4, which gives you that increased attack speed, which pairs very well with Greymane. So a little switch up from day 1 to day 2 here for Simplicity.
Now we'll see what level 7 is going to be at. Perfect job there on the boop, hitting Muradin as he was hoping to be able to dwarf toss away from that, keeping him in the Frozen Tempest. And that nets a kill on Muradin just as the first tribute is going to spawn.
Top
Simplicity had started to rotate down. It's not going to be the case anymore. They'll just head up top and see what they can do there.
Gilly, the #1 thing that you'll hear from most pros is that the best way to counter Vikings is to have a Viking hunter. You could see Jason being very much aware of that situation. Zuna and Urho started to make their way up. Jason found his way back to safety. He's going to have a hard time defending here. You're going to get a counter push bottom as Equinox got real low. Urho, does he find himself an Illidan? Nope. but so far they haven't been able to get those Viking kills.
Casanova's roots have been on point for switching back over to main tank. Like to see, or I'm liking what I see. Dragon Queen will at least be used to take out Eric, if nothing else.
Right on cue on when I said they haven't got the kill on it, they got the kill.
Erho healing up thanks to Essence, even though with the Lucio speed boost, that was a very speedy frozen Arthas chasing after him. And Simplicity now are fairly low in resources. K1 Pro on mana. Erho had to use up his Essence. So how much can they contest for this tribute? They really don't want to be giving these away, given the fact that they're already a level behind.
Yeah, because by the time the third tribute comes around, they could oh, K1 Pro, he's probably not making it out of there. Yeah, that's good recognition, making sure that they have that, but they're going to be level 10 by the time the third one comes in. If we see a play towards a boss, I wouldn't be surprised. Maybe snowball that boss plus a curse. Gilly, what do you make of Skullcracker, though? Is that to kind of deal with the Illidan coming in, maybe try and get some disruption?
It's gotta be. They didn't get Reverberation, or King Caffeine didn't pick Reverberation for the increased auto attack slow, but at least having Skullcracker and then having, if you have the Abathur hat on him, giving him the 25% increased attack speed from Adrenal Overload, and then pairing that up with Skullcracker just to be able to get those stuns. Maybe, obviously it also gives additional damage, but just something to help keep this Genji, this Illidan, even the Arthas with Lucio speed and the Vikings off of your Alexstrasza.
Well, they are indeed making a play. It's going to be boss curse potential here. Level 10 should be picked up by SpaceStation. I wonder how soon some of these people will leave. If you can get the hunt for Equinox, leave him to kind of hang out. You see Arthas already peeling off. Lucio already peeling off. I love the recognition, the play here. They might even look to try and steal this boss. But Hunt is there. You have your global. Gilly, this is about to get explosive here for SpaceStation.
This is a problem. Those rotations come in way too fast with Lucio. Casanova is here in time. Heroic abilities are nowhere near in sight for Simplicity at all. They have to get out of here. They cannot lose too much, but with Dragon Blade coming out, Greymane quickly goes down as Jay Shrita shreds it through his health bar. 1 kill and a double boss and a curse. Yikes.
It's snowballing out of control right now. We're going to have to change his name to Jay Shredder, by the way. Equinox taking some damage, however, but the structures now with the curse are locked down. Siege Giants top, boss bottom. Minions galore. Oh, and a gang squad. Oh, by the way, Merc Lord. Kelly, this is snowballing so hard.
This is a huge problem for Simplicity right now. They've got to get heroic abilities. SpaceStation are everywhere. They have a very high health boss. Dragon Queen's going to come in. It does at least keep Zuna alive, but they're looking at this keep, and they potentially are looking for more unless this Dragon Queen can get enough damage down to cut through the amp it up of Tomster. He doesn't have Sound Barrier for 30 more seconds. But they're still not 10. They're looking for a core push right now. 6 minutes, 45 seconds.
Gilly, I hate to call a game this early, but you got an Illidan on the core, a 60% health boss, and they are ripping through them. Our fastest game of HGC North America this year as SpaceStation turns the tables in game 2. That draft, high risk, extremely high reward.
Profitable.
Yes.
Yeah. But we did say it. They needed a win from that. With how much they devoted to it, with the picking of Volskaya in the first game, that was a win that SpaceStation was necessary for them to feel comfortable tying it back up, going into game 3 confidently. I say they deserve to be that confident after that one.
I think now, when we look back at do we let Abathur through, they had something in mind, and I think that was the strategy, knowing that that would be the likely path that their draft would go down on the side of Simplicity, and it seems like SpaceStation had a great pickup. Jason, the experience on the Vikings, that looked good. I don't know if it would work in most compositions or against most opponents, but against that style draft, knowing that that's the way that they would be going, I think that was really well executed, both from a draft and a gameplay standpoint.
Yeah, it was basically the exact same draft that Simplicity ran versus Gale Force yesterday. So it's nice to see SpaceStation be able to see that and say, if they run the exact same thing versus us, we're going to punish them for that. And that they did, tying up the series. We are going to go to a quick commercial break. After the break, we'll have Game 3 between our two S teams.